Mark Hale here from New York Post headquarters. I want to welcome in our new Jets beat writer, my friend Brian Costello. And finally, we can talk some football, Brian. Let's get into Jets free agency here. And question number one is, what do you think the Jets are going to do at the wide receiver position this offseason?
Well, that's the number one question entering free agency, Mark, with the Jets. They have both Santonio Holmes and Braylon Edwards to deal with, as well as Brad Smith. I think though they wanted to bring back both of them. I don't know if that's feasible with the salary cap. I think they'll end up bringing back one of the two, and I think their preference would be Santonio Holmes. But there's going to be a lot to be answered once free agency starts and we see what kind of numbers get thrown around.
What about the cornerback position, Brian? Obviously, last year the Jets brought in Antonio Cromartie, playing opposite Darrelle Revis. He's a free agent now, too. He talked the other day about how he's not going to give the Jets any kind of discount. Do you see them being able to bring him back?
I think they will. I think that's a high priority for them. Playing opposite Revis, Cromartie was huge for them last year. And in the beginning of the year when Revis was hurt, he was even bigger. I just don't think Kyle Wilson is ready, their number one pick from last year, to take over a cornerback. So if they let Cromartie walk, it's going to be creating a problem where they're going to have to find someone to fill that void, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of good options out there. That being said, if Cromartie's looking for the a ton of money, they might not be able to do it. And from the way he was talking the other day, it sounds like whoever the highest bidder is, that's where he's going.
Brian, let's talk a little bit about Sean Ellis. He's the longest tenured Jet on this team, longtime defensive lineman, drafted all the way back in 2000. Another guy who's a free agent, veteran player. Was this Ellis's last go-around, or do you think they bring him back for another season?
I think he'll be back for another season. Ellis was tremendous in the playoffs. If you remember his game against the Patriots, he had a really great game there. And they drafted Muhammad Wilkerson in the first round this year, and maybe he could be viewed as replacing Ellis at some point, but considering this guy has not had a practice yet, the Jets don't know what they have, and I don't think they're going to go on blind faith of putting him out there as a starting defensive end to start the year. So I think ideally they'd like to have Ellis there for another year, tutor Wilkerson, and then maybe next year they could turn over the starting role to Muhammad Wilkerson.
We're talking with Brian Costello, our Jets beat writer here, as we look toward NFL free agency. And Brian, let's get into the salary cap situation and how that might affect the Jets. Is there any player of significance that you think the Jets might have to cut?
Yeah, I mean, the Jets are right up against the cap. They're going to have to restructure some deals. They have, Mark Sanchez might have to restructure his contract. Revis might have to restructure his contract. They have David Harris, who they franchise tagged in February. You'll probably want to work out a long-term deal with him as quickly as possible to get some room. If they do end up making cuts, I don't see anyone of huge significance, but Brian Thomas, starting outside linebacker, he could be a guy that goes if they can find a replacement for him. They do need a pass rusher. They might look for that and get rid of Thomas.
Brian, last question for you here. We've kind of talked over the last few years how the Jets have almost become the Yankees. Every year it seems like they make at least one big move, maybe two. Last year with Holmes and Cromartie, the year before with Sanchez and Braylon Edwards, and the year before that with Brett Favre, obviously. Is there a big move that you think the Jets make this offseason?
I think that the way that the schedule has fallen with the lockout, I don't know how much time Mike Tannenbaum has to work on the big move, but the Jets are always looking at everything, and you can't rule anything out. So, Asamoah from the Raiders, the cornerback, he's the number one free agent. He doesn't make a lot of sense for the Jets because he's going to have a huge price, but you never know with Tannenbaum. He could go after that. If he doesn't get Edwards or Holmes, he might go after Randy Moss, who, that'll be a big splash. That's going to make big headlines in New York. So you never rule anything out with the Jets.
All right, that was Brian Costello talking about everything from Antonio Cromartie and Santonio Holmes and Braylon Edwards to Randy Moss and Sean Ellis. Plenty more from Brian as the summer goes in NFL free agency. You can follow him on Twitter at Brian Coz, C-O-Z. For the New York Post, I'm Mark Hale.